folks. Why Would You Ask That is a podcast that answers some of the weirdest questions. A lot of those are inappropriate for some listeners. If you're squeamish, easily disturbed, or just having a bad day, this may not be for you. But if you've got to know the answers like we do, stay tuned.
Why Would You Ask That? Presented by me, M, they, them.
And Karen, she, her.
And Remy, he, him.
And today we ask, what the fuck is up with Sir Arthur, say his name. Someone say his name.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini.
And the fucking Cottingley fairies.
We have a lot of questions.
We have so many fucking questions. Conan Doyle, what the fuck? Like, how? Like, why? Famous detective writer man, lover of fairies.
In possibly more ways than one. I'm sorry.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, yes, with the fairies. This is the question a lot of people have, is that he's like a man of logic and reason. He was a doctor, right? So, why? Why did you believe these things, man? So we're going to talk about it.
Fuck yeah. So, let's kick it off. Karen, you have a question.
So, okay. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini, they, had kind of this weird rivalry, right? About, spiritualism. And Houdini was always like, psychics are fake, right? And Arthur Conan Doyle was like, shut up, they're real. And Houdini, made it his life's mission to debunk all of the psychics in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, that sums it up.
Okay. I don't know how to phrase this as a question.
Okay.
So we talked about Arthur Conan Doyle pretty recently, and I remember something about him and Harry Houdini. They knew each other somehow. And they didn't like each other?
Yeah, they didn't like each other toward the end there, but at the beginning, they were friends.
Oh my god. Friends to enemies.
Yeah, that's right. Friends to enemies. And it happened super quick. And it was very offensive what had happened to make them not be friends anymore.
Oh no. What was Houdini not cool with gay people?
Houdini was a homophobe?
What? No.
Oh, okay.
No, actually, it went the other direction. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's wife way offended Houdini. I'll get there.
Oh, okay.
So, we're going to talk about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini's, the rift in their friendship and what that is, because it's wild. And we're going to talk about it because we're not going to talk about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's writing, because that's what we talked about. We talked about it already. We did 2 episodes about Sherlock. We don't need to talk about that again. And I'm not going to talk about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's things that aren't Sherlock, because I don't even know how many people have even read the things he wrote that weren't Sherlock. Almost nobody read him when he was alive. I don't know how many people have read him now. So what we're going to talk about is the thing that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was the most into during the latter part of his life, which is spiritualism. He was so into it that he also wrote a book about that.
Wow.
He'd just be doing it, yeah. In 1923 and 24, Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini both were touring in the United States. They both sold out theaters, often within the same city, within a few days of one another, and neither of them were offering crowds either of the thing that they were famous for. So the author wasn't talking about books, and the magician wasn't doing tricks. Instead, they were just talking about spiritualism. In case people don't know what exactly spiritualism is, it was a movement that started in New York in the 1840s, based on the belief that humans are composed of a physical body and also a spirit that's separate from the physical body and lived on after death and also could communicate with you after you died.
Okay.
It grew in popularity through the decades, and by the 1920s in the United States, it was huge. This happened particularly, I've seen it speculated about because not just in America, but in Britain also, there was like an enormous loss of life between the Civil War in America and then World War One took a big toll, and then also we had the Spanish flu, which killed some odd 800,000 people.
Oh, is that all?
Is that all? Yes.
People were a little sad, and they were really wanting some way to, get in touch with those dead loved ones.
Yeah, exactly. So there was mediums and seances and claims that spirits were sending messages through raps and taps on the walls and stuff, and ectoplasm and automatic writing and Ouija boards and spirit photography, and there's a lot of stuff. And there's always people who want to take advantage of horrible things, and so there's these people spring up trying to take advantage of people's grief and wanting to contact their loved ones. And so Doyle, his son died in World War One, so he turned to spiritualism and got really into it. And Houdini's mother died, and he turned to spiritualism and decided he was going to give it a try. And this is how the two of them sort of came into it together.
Friendship.
Yes, friendship. Doyle was a physician. He was like really into the sciences. He wrote a famous detective who was also a big scientific minded, like genius, very rational. You could say that he's like the most rational. Here's a quote from Eric Collery, a curator at the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas at Austin, where Doyle's and Houdini's papers about spiritualism are at. He says, Doyle's interest in medicine and science drove his interest in spiritualism. He genuinely believes that there were energies and aspects of nature that we still didn't understand. And of course, that's science, right?
Mm-hmm.
End quote. So Arthur Conan Doyle joined something called the Ghost Club and the Society for Psychical Research. And both of those things still exist. The latter one describes itself as, quote, the first society to conduct organized scholarly research into human experiences that challenge contemporary scientific models, quote. Other members you might recognize was Charles Dickens and W.B. Yeats. Both of those guys were in there too. Yeah. And on the other side of things, Harry Houdini was an entertainer. He was a master of misdirection whose escapes like defied the very laws of nature seemingly. Also, huge skeptic. Here is a quote from Amanda Zimmerman, who's a reference librarian at the Library of Congress, where there's a really huge collection of Houdini's like books and photographs and stuff. Quote, he was on a 30-year crusade to debunk spiritualism. He believed it was the responsibility of the magician to make it clear to the public that this was not magic, this was all tricks of the eye, this was misdirection, this was an illusion. End quote.
Mm-hmm.
So they came together and they were friends, very briefly. They wrote a lot of letters to each other, and they sent each other books on like spiritualist stuff, trying to convince each other that they were wrong. And then everything went bad.
Oh.
I want to tell you exactly how they met because it's ridiculous.
I'm eager to learn.
So I know that both of you have looked into this subject before and know a little bit about it. I know that. Have either of you, did either of you know how they met? I know Em just said that they don't know. Did you know, Karen?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's great. So what happened was, Arthur Conan Doyle was coming over to do a talk about spiritualism to America, and Houdini heard of this, so he had like a big dinner or whatever with a bunch of magicians, and he invited Doyle to come there to talk to them. And Doyle was like, oh man, these guys are not going to believe anything I have to say. And he was super nervous about this. So he showed up at the meeting, and he showed up with a video wherein it looked like a bunch of dinosaurs were walking around.
What?
And he was like, see this video with a bunch of living dinosaurs walking around in it? Keep your minds open, people. And then he refused to answer questions.
Oh no.
So for like a little while, they couldn't prove what was going on with the video because these things are brand new. So basically he played a prank on Harry Houdini to try to make him believe the dinosaurs were still alive.
Oh no.
Oh my goodness, that's pretty cute.
Yeah.
And then like the media talked about it, and then he wrote a letter to the newspaper with a letter specifically to Houdini. Not even he didn't mail it to Houdini. He put it in the paper
Oh my god.
saying that it was fake.
Oh my god.
And then they became friends after that for a very short period.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That's pretty cute.
Yeah. It's adorable, honestly. Both men amassed like scores and scores of like pictures which appear to capture on film spirits that are invisible to the human eye, like ghostly figures, sometimes like hidden halfway and other times clearly recognizable as like family members or historical figures. Historical figures seem to be very popular, probably because pictures of them were very readily available.
Yes. Yeah.
They just kind of hovered in the background of just otherwise mundane portraits or took over the images entirely. In the 1920s, depending on if you sided with Doyle or with Houdini, they were like incontrovertible visual evidence of the spirit world or proof that clever photographic tricks could like fool anybody. So I've got pictures because some of these, if you look at them now, you're just like, really?
Mm-hmm.
You believe that? So like, here's a picture. I'll put all of these into the resources. Like, here's one.
It's like Photoshop for back in the day.
And you can tell when we're looking at this, you're like, these are clearly somebody else's just like portraits you have stuck on here.
Mm-hmm.
They're all like in like that half turn to the side looking at the camera that people do.
The
Yep.
classic.
The classic, yeah. Or there's like this one here where it's just like a little girl standing on a porch and somebody has just superimposed some other person's family portrait
Yeah.
onto the picture.
Yeah.
Do they call that a double
exposure.
Yeah.
And this is how most of them were done, was by double exposing the film. So I was looking at these pictures and I was like, oh my gosh. Just because they're just so many. I don't know. I just look at them and I'm like, wow.
You have to think about it in the terms of like regular people may not have been like accessible to cameras and film and photographs, like, and it was still relatively new. So, and then messing with film, people probably didn't think you could do that. Like, how would anyone be able to do that?
We talked about this when we talked about Victorian headless photos way back when we talked about that.
Yeah.
Because people were like, how do you, what? Oh my
Oh,
God.
oh.
Yeah. Because you just, for that one, they spliced two negatives together to make one picture. And this is double exposing. And like, you're right, the average person doesn't have access to the cameras. And really, it's like, at the turn of the century when we first got X-ray, it's like you can see people's bones when you take pictures. Well, why can't we conceivably take pictures of somebody's spirit when it's floating around in the air?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, we can see pictures of people's bones and we can't see those usually.
Yep.
That's what I imagine the thought process was like.
Yeah.
It's like back in the day I didn't understand 3D pictures. Like, what I mean by 3D pictures is like you could give me a video game and I could only understand it if it was like flat, like 2D game. A game I didn't understand what I was seeing.
That doesn't mean it doesn't make me chuckle seeing some of these.
Oh yeah. These are pretty great.
Now, this one that's of Houdini himself, it's actually super well done. So here's a picture that Houdini has of him sitting with Abraham Lincoln.
I love that he's showing him like a little picture. This you.
Yeah.
This you.
Yeah, he's showing him a picture in the book. So yeah, this is an image of Houdini sitting in a chair, sort of next to / across from Lincoln. He's like showing him a picture in a book. They look like they've been talking about something. Houdini was really into Lincoln. He looked up to him. And if they had lived at the same time, then they would have maybe talked. Lincoln had been assassinated like a decade or so before Houdini was born, though. So he created this image around 1925 to prove that spirit photography was a fraud, says Zimmerman from the Library of Congress. Quote, "This image is a really strange story," she adds. "It was not uncommon for mediums at the time to claim to have seen well-known people." And Lincoln was a favorite apparition because his wife, Mary Todd, was really into spiritualism, and she used to hold seances in the White House.
Right.
And Zimmerman says, "This really angered Houdini, who, in addition to being a Lincoln fan, was also an acquaintance of Lincoln's son."
Oh, well, that's wild.
No kidding.
Yeah. Quote, "In an effort to make sure that Robert Todd wouldn't be taken in by these fraudsters, Houdini created his own double exposure image of himself, supposedly conversing with Lincoln, and then he sent that photo, along with a very detailed scientific explanation of the double exposure process, to Robert Todd Lincoln, so he would not be taken in by anyone offering him this kind of connection to his murdered father." End quote.
Aww.
Well, that's good.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, spirit photography was used largely like this, and a lot of people took comfort in it because, like I said, an enormous amount of people had died in the years that it became popular. So that's why there's also this image floating around, which is a picture of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Yes, thank you.
It's just his fucking head. It's not even like a good picture of his head. It's like someone took a little circle, zoomed in of his fucking face, and just put it on a black background over people. Like, whoa, bro, he's not. It's like, the fucking booze from Mario. He's shit like that. Just put a fucking pair of little stubby arms on him. There you go. That's a boo. Oh God.
I was thinking of the moon from Bear in the Big Blue House.
Yeah, this is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's head. It's very big, it's very white, it's not the least transparent. Yes, it's just floating above his wife, Jean, and one of his sons, just sort of floating there, huge, on a black background. This photograph was taken by William Hope in 1931, the year after Doyle died. So for Jean, who considered herself a medium, and once famously claimed to have channeled Houdini's deceased mother, the image was proof that her husband was in the afterlife. So yeah, Doyle's wife, Jean, did more than just claim she was a medium. She also was a supposedly purveyor of automatic writing, which is when the ghost writes through you. So at their Sussex home, they had their own personal spirit guide called Phineas, who regularly predicted global catastrophe. Phineas also dictated when the Doyles should move house or travel. So in his book, Houdini and Conan Doyle, Friends of Genius, Deadly Rivals, Christopher Sanford recounts an occasion when Jean got the local station master at the train station to reschedule a train just so that her husband could take it at a different time because Phineas, the spirit guide, told her to.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine going up to the train station and busting up there and be like, "Tell the conductor not to start the train yet. My ghost told me so."
I can't fucking imagine that ever being a valid excuse.
So it was the time when Jean supposedly channeled Houdini's mother that cracked their friendship between Doyle and Houdini.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although following the private seance in which Houdini's mother apparently made contact via automatic writing, the Doyles thought Houdini appeared deeply moved. He later publicly announced that he didn't believe that the 15 pages of grammatical English writing was a message from his mom. Quote, "Not least because his mother's English was terrible." Yeah, her first language wasn't English, so her English was bad, he says.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, because he was first generation American. Because I think his parents were from Austria.
Yeah, Hungarian. Yeah, his mother just didn't speak or write English very well, so he was like, "These 15 pages of perfect grammatical English are not from my mother." So the relationship really barely survived the incident. And then Houdini just increasingly denounced mediums who Doyle really liked and was convinced was genuine. So, like, Doyle would be like, I love this guy. He's definitely genuine. And then Houdini would come behind and be like, this man is a fraud, and here's why. So their relationship just broke down from there. And after his death, his widow, Bess, held a yearly seance, hoping that her husband might make contact and give her a message using their prearranged code. Because he was like, just in case this is real, this is the code. And if it's really me, this is the code that I'm going to use. But he did never show up.
Wow. Yep.
I remember reading about that. Yep, he's officially dead.
Yep.
In 1936, she gave up and she said, quote, 10 years is long enough to wait for any man. Y'all, there's some really good quotes from like firsthand sources in here.
Yeah.
I love it. Also, this will not be able to come up organically in the episode, so I'm just going to say it here. But like, I have a video of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle giving an interview from 1929 that I need to put in our resource page, where he talks about his relationship to Sherlock Holmes and spiritualism both together in the same interview, and also the fact that he thinks it's weird that people thought they were real people. It's literally a whole interview that somebody did with this man where he addresses everything that we've talked about in all three of these episodes about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
That's really fucking funny.
And it's him speaking, and it's from 100 years ago. So I was listening to him sit there and talk into the camera, and I was like, whoa.
Oh.
Yeah. I just needed to mention it, because there's no way for me to bring it up organically. Also, for one thing, I'm watching this like, wow, this was almost 100 years ago. And then he says something like, now, when did I first get into psychic encounters? Well, I'd have to say that was in 1886. And I was like blown back for a minute.
Wild. And that's something that people will be able to regularly experience in the future.
Yeah. Also, just
assholes.
Just because I said something about how in last episode we did about him, we were talking about the Mouse Detective.
Mm-hmm.
The Great Mouse Detective, the cartoon. And I was like, man, they really made Dr. Watson so stupid in this one, even though he's a doctor and he's really smart.
Mm-hmm.
And we all agreed with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle says in his interview, he's like, I even have women trying to write letters to his stupid friend Watson.
Oh my god.
That's so mean.
And I was like, his stupid friend Watson. And it was like, oh my god, burn! So his opinion is that Watson is also stupid. So I was like, well, serves me right. You didn't write him that way.
Watson, what a dumb sack of bricks! What a piece of shit! Sounds like anybody talking about their OC, to be honest.
He basically spent the first part of the video talking about why he started writing Sherlock, and then he badmouthed the readers for thinking Sherlock was real.
That is so fucking funny.
As though he thought nobody would watch the video. So, and then he's like, I even had one woman, after Sherlock took up bees, write to me saying that she also was an expert at beekeeping and on separating the queen from the rest, whatever that means. And I was just like, you wrote it in your book. Did you just not bother knowing anything about it? I don't know. It made me laugh.
That way.
He just spent 5 minutes of the 10-minute video making fun of his readers. Made me laugh. So I'm gonna put that with our resources because it's fantastic. Off to the side, I saw Stephen Fry, great British actor and stage actor, talking about the night Sir Arthur Conan Doyle met Oscar Wilde, and I was like, oh, this man's gay, so he'll have good things to say about this. I'm gonna go back and watch that. Anyway, back to the actual episode. We're on to the fairies now.
On to the fucking fairies!
And so, like we said, people believed all kinds of crazy things about the spirit photography and photography in general. And we can look at these pictures and think it's crazy that they believed in the spirit photography. But honestly, ghost videos on TikTok and YouTube and haunting shows on the Travel Channel, those are super popular. So really, spirit photography never did go away, did it? We just believe in it in a different way, a lot of us.
Number 15. Sorry, I just had to throw one out there to my homeboy Chills. May someday never talk to him.
Never meet your heroes. We love you, Chills. Don't meet us.
So Doyle's belief in spirit photography is, we laugh at him, but like back then people just thought it was fine. The vast majority of people just thought it was cool that he believed in it, even the media, except for in the case of the Cottingley fairy photos. That's when everybody laughed at him.
Yeah, I still laugh at him to this day. His ghost actually came in just yesterday night because I was like, oh, the Cottingley fairies. And then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle came in. He's like, I can't believe you're still talking about that. And I said, well, dude, what can you expect? It's really fucking funny. He said, no, it's really not that funny. And I said, yes, it is. And he said, no, please stop. And I said, no, you're dead. You can't tell me what to do. And so he cried and then he left.
Wow.
What, you don't believe me?
Call him up.
All right, hold on. Give me 1 second. Oh, my phone doesn't make noises when I type into it. Sorry, it's a really long distance phone call. Okay. Hey, hello? I'm looking for... No. Doyle.
What do you want?
Hello?
Yes. What is it? I was in the middle of a very good book.
You came over last night, right?
We don't talk about it, but yes.
I need you to prove me right about something.
Fine.
Did you or did you not cry?
Maybe a little. Goodbye.
That's an admission of guilt.
Okay, I believe you.
Damn straight you do. Damn gay you do.
Okay, so the Cottingley fairy photos were supposedly photographic evidence of the existence of fairies, documented by two Yorkshire girls, 16-year-old Elsie Wright and her 9-year-old cousin Frances Griffiths. And Doyle was way taken in by this.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1920s, Arthur Conan Doyle received a letter from a spiritualist friend named Felicia, who informed him of some photographs which proved the existence of fairies in Yorkshire. Conan Doyle asked his friend Edward Gardner to go and investigate it, because he couldn't be bothered, I guess, on his own to do it. And Gardner found himself in possession of several photos, which showed very small female figures with transparent wings. The photographer had been the two young girls, and they claimed they had seen the fairies on an earlier occasion and had gone back with a camera and photographed them. They had been taken in July and September 1917 near the Yorkshire village of Cottingley. So the two cousins claimed to have seen the fairies around the beck, quote, quote, which is a stream, basically every day, of course. And then at the time, they claimed to have no intention of being famous, and Elsie had just taken her father's camera, like, without permission, and taken some pictures. Elsie's father, rightly so, was like, good joke, kids, and just didn't think anything of it. But her mom was like, oh my god, look at these fairies, and showed them to Gardner, the first two of them, and Gardner was also like, oh my god, look at them. And so he circulated them through the British supernaturalist community. And then when Conan Doyle saw them in 1920, he gave both the girls a camera and asked them to take more pictures. So free cameras.
Yay!
And they produced 3 more prints. And I can link this from the Museum of Hoaxes that's online.
I love the Museum of Hoaxes, by the way. Use that as a really big resource because they're just very thorough.
Yeah, they go into detail about each of the 5 photographs and also show the photographs. So you can look at the photographs over there. And again, these are things that when I look at them, I'm like, how you believe this? And it's not even because like the other ones, they're 3D pictures that somebody has superimposed onto other pictures, sometimes really well, but these are like drawings. They were like hand drawings in like a children's book that these kids like redrew and traced themselves and slapped them onto another and slapped them onto like something else. And then they're just flat. They have no dimension.
Mhm.
I can't get there. I can't even give him grace by 1920 because they don't even have the dimension of the face like a
Mm-mm.
human would, like a human in a picture does. But literally thousands of people over the course of a century from 1920 on really believed that these pictures were real. So like literally 1920, okay, maybe I can try to give you some grace, but up to the 1980s, how do you still believe that this is real?
Yeah.
They're like, well, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle like said it was real, so
Yeah, I guess it's just that nobody had come before to say that it wasn't real. So there was a big skeptic called James Randi, and he debunked them for good when he pointed out that the fairies, he was like, these are clearly pictures from the 1915 children's book, Princess Mary's Gift book. He was just like, guys, they're right there.
Yeah.
And then he was like, and also, if you just look at these, they clearly show discrepancies in exposure time, which clearly points to deliberate manipulation. And then the two women, Elsie and Frances, confessed finally in the 1980s.
it took them a hella long time.
Well, somebody finally called him out on it. So it was 50 years after Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's involvement for when they faked the paper cutouts on these pictures. And he died in the 1930s, so it was that long after he died. So he died thinking the fairies were real. I'd let him die happy, I guess.
Shame.
I can also link to a video of Randy and Elsie, one of the girls, talking about the fairies while he questions her about faking these fairy pictures.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter and granddaughter of Francis Griffiths possesses the original pictures and one of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's cameras, which is a great thing to still have.
Damn.
Yeah. Both of them believed that the fairies were real, and they said, but we're not stupid, they said. It's just that throughout much of this time, people looked at the camera as being scientific and weren't like aware, of how easily you could manipulate it, like Karen said. And then Frances, their mom and grandma, even when she admitted that all the pictures were fake, she said, but not the fifth one. She said the fifth one's not fake. Her and Elsie both continued to insist that that fifth picture was real. And then everybody on the show also couldn't get her to confess that the fifth one was fake. And then Arthur Conan Doyle and Edward Gardner also, again, thought they were both real. And here is what Gardner has to say about number 5. This is especially remarkable as it contains a feature quite unknown to the girls. The sheath or cocoon appearing in the middle of the grasses has not been seen by them before, and they had no idea what it was. Fairy observers of Scotland and the New Forest, however, were familiar with it and described it as a magnetic bath, woven very quickly by the fairies and used after dull weather in the autumn especially. The interior seems to be magnetized in some manner that stimulates and pleases. End quote.
Okay. What the hell?
Yeah, I don't know. So their kids and grandkids thought that the fairies were still real because this weird little cocoon looking deal that's in the middle of this fifth picture were like they were like, no, this is real. This is a thing I've never seen before. It's a real picture. We didn't fake that one. But obviously they did put these little paper cutouts of fairies right there. So they just didn't want to lose all of their face. And so now I've talked about the entirety of what I needed to talk about with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini, and now I really absolutely need to detour and talk about the amazing Randy.
So who the fuck is the amazing Randy? What does he have to do with any of this shit?
The amazing Randy is a magician that beat Harry Houdini's coffin submerging record, and also he's a big skeptic who beats psychics and scam artists and stuff at their own game. So he tangentially relates to this topic.
Oh, so he just fucks with psychics then.
Yeah, he's just amazing, as his name would entail.
What?
Yeah, so he just died in 2020 at the age of 92 for old people related issues and not because of the pandemic.
Well, I'm glad he died of old age.
I just wanted to say he lived a good long life and died of old age, not for other reasons.
Like the mafia, the magician mafia.
So he would do his tricks and tell people how things were done in the service of making sure people knew it wasn't magic at all. He would literally do a show and then end the show and say, "These were tricks. Nothing supernatural was done here tonight." And I showed you all a picture of him before with his little like skull cane and stuff, and I told you he looked like a wizard.
Oh, that guy!
That guy, look at him. Look at this
Mhm.
picture of him where he looks more like a wizard.
Yeah.
Bro's just like, he's got the beard, he's got the wizened old age thing, and he definitely looks like he's up to something. That's like the main component of being a wizard. Definitely up to something.
So he began his career in the late 1940s as an illusionist and escape artist, which is when his real career began, because for a little while he was just working at a carnival as a mentalist after he dropped out of school at the age of 17 because he was too bored.
Know that, bro.
He literally dropped out of school and ran away to join the circus, essentially.
I love it.
Back when you could still get away with it.
Yeah. So on one occasion, and pause for a minute because I just want to remind you that by the time he was a real quote, by the time he was working professionally as an escape artist and illusionist, he was almost 50.
Wow.
Just want you to know this.
Wow.
So on one occasion, he extricated himself from a straitjacket while dangling upside down over Niagara Falls.
Well, shit.
On another, after almost an hour from within a block of ice, and on a third from still another straitjacket while suspended over Broadway. In his own words, he said, "I just wanted to beat his records," while talking about Houdini. He said, "I wanted to beat all of them. I wanted to beat his record." He was just like naming things in that quote. So I didn't copy it down, but he was like, "I wanted to beat his record for this. I wanted to beat his record for this." And he just named like 6 things in the quote.
Just didn't stop.
And then he did manage to do that. He did beat Houdini's records in surviving 104 minutes in a closed coffin, submerged in a pool during a live broadcast on the Today Show in 1956. He did beat one of Houdini's records.
Good for him.
Yeah, and the only reason that he quit being an escape artist and illusionist is that when he was doing that trick where you go down into like the milk can and they lock the top of it, is that the locks got stuck and he couldn't get out of the can and he broke some of his vertebrae in his back.
Oh, so that makes it a little bit difficult.
Yeah, he was like over 50 at that time. And he said in his quote, he said, "Eventually it's just not fun to watch an old man crawl out of a can."
Oh, bro.
He hated tricking people, which is why he told people he wasn't tricking them. He hated tricking people so much that he made a career out of debunking psychics, faith healers, fortune tellers of all sorts. After he got done being a magician.
What a guy.
This is how he was inspired to do that. He was inspired to do this because, first off, he says, "I've always been a skeptic. I was born a skeptic." He says, he said that when he was a child, they would read him stories from the Bible, and he would just interrupt them and be like, "That doesn't make sense."
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay. And then he said when he was like 15, he went to church, and the preacher at the front was doing a trick where he pretended to read the minds of the people in the front of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And Randy saw through this because it reminded him of the tricks where the people like hold the envelope up to their head, and pretend to read what's inside of it.
Yeah.
And he knows how the trick is done, and so he can see through it, and it pissed him off because other people were really believing it. And he said, quote, "I saw people there weeping real tears and getting very emotionally disturbed and believing that this man had supernatural powers." So, end quote. So he walked up on the stage, interrupted the performance, and showed the audience how the trick was done. And then the preacher's wife called the police.
Oh my God.
And Randy spent four hours in jail.
Wow.
And he said, quote, "I made up my mind during the 4 hours that there would come a day that I would have the prestige, the knowledge, the platform on which to stand to denounce these people if they were fake." Quote. Yeah, so they put him in jail for trying to do the right thing, and then he was like, "That's it. This is my life now."
This is me now.
Yeah, and the if is important in him saying if they were fake, because he didn't live with like the absolute belief that that you couldn't be psychic. He never said that you couldn't have magic or that faith healing couldn't happen or that fortune telling wasn't real, but rather that he had never seen it and nobody had been able to prove to him that it existed, and that its peddlers were not actually ever doing those things as far as he could observe. So one of his more famous examples of this was he went after a psychic called Uri Geller, who made a name for himself in the 70s by performing, quote, psychokinetic tricks on TV.
The spoon guy.
Yeah, he bent the spoons. He would bend the spoons and the forks with his brain, supposedly. And of course, the way that you do this is you pre-bend the spoons and the forks. You bend them and bend them and bend them until they're close to breaking, and then you leave them straightened. And that way, when you're holding them, you can just push them, and then they break or bend. It's easy to do. Like, I know how it's done, but this is the 70s. So,
Right.
there's an episode of The Tonight Show, and I can probably find the clip. I didn't think to do it because I was just so excited to learn about Randy and talk about him. There's an episode of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson where Randy was a frequent guest. And Geller was coming on the show to do his powers, quote. And what Geller didn't know was that Randy had gotten on the phone with the show's prop department and told that person how to prepare the props to mess up Geller's trick. And basically he had told him to either not have access to the spoons or to like swap them out before the guy got to come on with him. And so what followed was like a painfully awkward segment that ended with Geller giving up and saying, I just don't feel strong tonight.
Wow.
Oh my god.
And then they had a feud for decades.
I love that.
Because people continued to believe that Uri Geller did the things that he said he did. So Randy continued to try to prove that he was a phony. So Uri said, "He's my biggest marketing department. This guy, he's just free marketing." And so Randy was like, "Curse you!" So he just kept trying to prove him wrong for decades.
That's amazing.
It's so fucking funny.
So Randy says, quote, when talking about like the tricks that these fake psychics use to trick people, he said, quote, "These things used to be on the back of cornflake boxes." Quote, he said, "They should have been transparent to earlier investigators before he came along," quote, "but apparently some scientists don't eat cornflakes or they don't read the back of the box," quote.
Oh my god.
And another one of Randy's most celebrated investigations was against somebody who was a big California preacher named Popoff.
Pop-off?
Popoff.
Bro.
He was a faith healer, and so Popoff had like a wide following on television and radio, and he drew huge crowds at these revival meetings around the country. He would, call on the people from the audience by name, and he would correctly identify what their afflictions were. In 1986, the Los Angeles Times reported that his monthly income was somewhere around $550,000.
Wow.
That's too much.
It's too much. So that year, Randy planted an accomplice with a radio scanner and a tape recorder at one of his shows, and the scanner picked up on Popoff's wife relaying information previously gathered about the audience members into a small receiver hidden in his ear.
There you go, a classic.
And it says, quote, "Popoff says God tells him these things." Randy told U.S. News and World Report in 2002, quote, "Maybe he does, but I didn't realize God used a frequency of 39.17 megahertz and had a voice exactly like Elizabeth Popoff's."
Oh, Jesus. It's good.
Footage of Mr. Popoff's service with the audio of his wife superimposed over it was broadcast on The Tonight Show.
This is amazing.
And so then Mr. Popoff ceased his operations in 1987, the next year.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice work, Randy.
Yeah. Randy does things. He's very sarcastic when he talks. He's very exaggerated when he takes you down sometimes. It's just, if he particularly wanted to take this guy down, so he did it in a very loud fashion. And his ways to try to take down Uri Geller also were very loud because he hated that guy. But with other people, not as much. In 1976, along with the astronomer Carl Sagan and the writer Isaac Asimov, among others, Randi founded what's called now the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. And also, he's founded something called the James Randi Educational Foundation. Randi sponsored something through that foundation called the $1 Million Challenge, which is a contest offering $1 million to a person who could, through rigorous scientific protocols, demonstrate evidence of the paranormal, the supernatural, or occult phenomenon. So it's not that he didn't necessarily not believe. He was just like, I want somebody to prove it to me using scientific parameters that this exists, and I will give that person $1 million.
And he never did.
The challenge attracted more than 1,000 people, and the prize remained unclaimed as of his retirement from the foundation in 2015. And as far as I know, it's still unclaimed. And Randi married his long-term partner, Jose Alvarez, in 2013 when he was 85 years old. Alvarez was an artist who fled Venezuela to escape his homophobic death threats against him, and met Randi at a Fort Lauderdale public library in 1986. Jose is still living.
Yay.
And that's good, because it means he can carry out Randi's last requests, which were, quote, I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes blown in Uri Geller's eyes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh my god.
I want to be a vengeful old man. Where do I sign up?
It's you age into the program.
Working on it.
Yeah, you'll get there, don't worry.
Yeah, once you hit 50, you have to have a life-changing moment, and then you go, well, now my life is being petty.
Okay, working on it. I also need to pick a nemesis, don't I?
Yeah, you have to pick a nemesis.
Fuck me. Okay. Working on it. Don't worry. I went in about 20 years, guaranteed.
I discovered when doing my research, when I discovered Randi here, while researching Houdini, I discovered Randi. While researching Randi, I discovered another person that Randi was inspired by from like the 1800s. And then a bunch of other people were inspired by Randi, like Penn and Teller also disprove people who are psychics and faith healers and stuff, and they were inspired by Randi. So there's like generations of people who have or are currently or whatever disproving people who are psychics and faith healers and stuff. And I think it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. So I could just like put together even more of these, but I stopped at Randi because he's great. He's amazing. He's the amazing Randi. And he continued on Harry Houdini's legacy of trying to disprove psychics so nicely, and he has inspired a whole new generation of people trying to disprove all of that stuff.
I just love it. Thank you, Remy.
I've learned a lot today.
Sure fucking have. Well, today we touched on the Conningly fairies and Conan Doyle and his escapades with fucking Houdini.
But not really.
But not really.
Probably.
His very short-lived escapades of trading info. And then not anymore.
They're best frenemies, okay?
But thanks everybody for listening. We are very excited to take your questions too, because we want to hear them and we want to answer them, and we are so super qualified to answer questions. So what you can do is you could visit our website, which is whywouldyouskthat.com, and go to that little contact form, throw in a question, or you can email us at whywouldyouskthatpod@gmail.com. So please send us your questions. We don't care how weird it is, how gross it is. Just don't ask any personal questions. That's our one line. Ask your weird questions. That's what we want. So thank you for listening. This is M, Karen, and Remy. And ask us some shit. Thank you. Good night.